Hi everyone and welcome to a new episode of Entrepreneurs Playing Games. My name is Amandine Flachs and today I am joined by Christian and Anna, the co-founders of Symbiotica AI. So if you're new to the stream, we are going to talk about Symbiotica AI and deep dive into Christian and Anna's journey. But if you have any questions, please do join the discussion on the chat. We are live on many platforms right now. I think we have some trouble with Facebook and LinkedIn today, but whatever the platform you're using, you can join the chat and I'll make sure to pass your question on to Christian and Anna. So the agenda for today is quite straightforward. We are going to first get a better idea of what Symbiotica AI is. Then we'll play some video games, and after that we'll deep dive more into the product, but also Anna and Christian's journey. So stay tuned and get ready to ask your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. So I'm really glad to have you both. I came across Symbiotica AI first when I was at Conception X demo day, and then we had the chance to jump into a discussion. So I'm really happy to have you. And also, I think before we get started and talk more about what you do, I think a good thing would be maybe to set up the foundation on the problem you're solving to understand why what you're doing is really cool. I think that's the first thing to do. Sure. What do you think?
Yeah, that'd be
Yeah?
I'm up for it.
Great.
Do you mind, Christian?
No, not at all.
Symbiotica AI is a fintech startup. We're about a year and a half old. We just finished our first Accelerator program, Conception X, and what we do is we employ machine learning to optimize liquidity profile of financial institutions. So although it sounds like a bit of a mouthful, I'm going to take a step back and try to explain it in the plainest language that there is. Because I think a lot of people have a misconception that financial services and banking is an overly complicated and bureaucratic kind of industry, whereas it's not. It's a very exciting and fascinating industry with a lot of opportunities for employment of technology and innovation. So if we think of banking and financial services, the reason why we as a society have financial services is so that we can facilitate the exchange of money from people who have it to money to people who need it. So in that way, people who earn money, who earn salary every month, they put their money in the bank, in the savings account, and for that they receive a premium. And the bank who has the money from these people who have it, then can lend the money to people who need it. For example, the corporations who are raising funds to expand, or even the government who are raising money to build infrastructure, build hospitals, train GPs. So in that way, people who have money give money to people who need it. Then, in that respect, the notion of liquidity comes in, and it generally refers to two things. One is, do I have enough money to trade, and is there someone to trade with? And how the two things fit together, like the people who have money, people who need money, and the liquidity, is that when banks give out the money to people who need it, they expect to receive this money later on. And sometimes people don't pay them back. And what that means is that somebody else who put money in the bank as well will
face difficulty.
Face difficulty when trying to receive their money back. So in a nutshell, if Christian borrows me some money, so I took money from Christian, and then you take money from Christian as well, so we both own Christian money. And if I go and spend my money, then I have nothing to pay Christian back, right? So what is Christian gonna do? He's not gonna have enough money, and that's how banks fail. So they don't have enough liquidity. So after 2008, the regulators have informed financial institutions to hold a certain buffer, so that they can pay their clients no matter what happens.
It's known as collateral or collateralization.
Yes.
Loans.
So keep an eye on the big big words to remember. Liquidity, collaterals, okay, yes.
Yeah, sure. So what Anna is actually referring to is funding liquidity, and it generally pertains to the liquidity required for institutions to be able to, banks mainly, to be able to conduct daily activity. There is another side to liquidity, which is known as market liquidity, and this is the ease at which someone can actually trade in the market or essentially access liquidity to be able to trade with someone. So if I have a large portfolio of stocks, for instance, and I want to get rid of it, if there's not sufficient liquidity in the market, that causes problems. Also, traders, portfolio managers perceive it as what's known as implicit transaction costs. So this is costs that you can't explicitly measure, but they exist. So it's not a brokerage fee, for instance. It's just a fee that exists for conducting a trade.
Okay. So how can you plan ahead if you can't measure that? Is this a big issue?
So yes, the issue we're trying to solve pertains to these two forms of liquidity.
Okay.
And the notion that, so essentially, financial institutions don't have a holistic view of their liquidity on an intraday basis. What this means is, well, the reason why is a lot of the banking infrastructure generally operates in isolation. So whenever a trader books a trade, for instance, by the time it actually reaches downstream and settles, that trade will not be the same trade anymore. It may have gone through what's known as netting or compression and a whole list of other activities. So the treasury desk within the institution generally has a problem with this because they can't see these liquidity flows. And then the market liquidity, this is more so on the trader side, as I mentioned before. Traders need to be able to execute their trades, but they're funded by the treasury desk as well, so they need to go to the treasury, who gives them the capital required for them to conduct their activities on a daily basis. And the problem is the treasury doesn't have a view of this. They don't see the liquidity holistically flowing down. So where we come in, do you wanna?
Yes, I hope we didn't scare anyone by diving deep into financial services. I mean, I tried to kind of bring, try to compare financial industry to, for example, supply chain, who faces the same kind of problems. But where we come in as a machine learning company, we work with the data that financial institutions have, their internal transactions data about different payments that they've made and the payments that they have received. And we analyze this data using data science techniques, so we can help them forecast their liquidity usage better. So in our current proof of concept, we used high frequency data from electronic markets, and we analyzed it to predict what's known as a market impact. So how does the market price changes after I trade? So it's a very interesting and very important notion in trading, and it directly refers to liquidity. So I guess a simple example to illustrate it would be liquidity of Christmas trees. So in the summer, nobody is really looking for a Christmas tree. So there is not much Christmas trees on the market. Nobody is really talking about Christmases. If you need one, you go to a specialized shop. Closer to Christmas, there is a lot of Christmas trees around. There is a huge bargain. You can go to different places around November, December time. The closer to Christmas you get, the less Christmas trees there are, so they become more expensive. And if you could have gone one for, 25, 30 bucks, 15th of December, you can get one for, 50 or even 100. So the price increases. And that's what's known as the market impact. And financial institutions are trying to minimize it as much as they can so that they execute their trades and their financial obligations at the price that they predicted. So we come in and we help them estimate their market impact more accurately than the current tools that they have. And what that means is that they can schedule their trades better and decrease their costs.
Yeah, so generally the cost that they incur is the collateral that we mentioned earlier on. They're obligated to place essentially an additional pool of capital to be able to conduct a certain trade. So depending on the size of the trade, the risk profile of the bank, the counterparty that they're trading with, etc. The problem is the way that banks are measuring this is what's the worst case scenario given the past. That's really bad. And it's very rudimentary. I don't understand why they're doing this, but essentially there are better ways to actually accurately measure your liquidity and therefore reduce the buffer and put it to better use elsewhere. And this is the issue that the Treasury Desk faces today. And essentially that's what we solve.
Okay.
I hope that made sense. Sorry.
It's quite complex, so please
Yes.
everyone, if there are any notion or anything you want more explanation on, please feel free to ask. I did some research, so I kind of understand, but even here I'm like a bit confused on some terms, but I
Okay.
think that's the thing
Maybe we'll
about
try to
financial
clarify.
space, right? There are always so many terms that are quite complex, while they're just representing something not that complex to
Yes.
understand, but
It's jargon.
That's very frustrating. Yeah, there is a lot of jargon that, in my opinion, is unnecessary. But when you've been in the industry for quite some time, you kind of get used to it. So it's something that we're still trying to improve on, and that's why I try to bring in the examples from everyday life, because they attain to exactly the same problems, and the solution that we're building can be applied not only in the financial service, not only in capital markets, but in payments or in supply chain, where everyone faces this notion of what happens if the other person doesn't pay me back, because I already have this other payments scheduled. So if somebody who has a mortgage loses their job, how are they going to repay? So that's the problem that applies not only in capital markets, and that's important to understand, that the reason why we focus on financial institutions is because if they were to fail, it would affect everyone in the society. Whilst if, I don't know, a retailer fails, well, the people who work for it might fail, but the large scale of the effect would not be as significant.
Mm-hmm.
so in the past we've seen some banks failing, not many, and it doesn't happen that often, but it happened already, so it's something that can happen. But how can banks right now, what can they do, or what are they doing actually to make sure that they manage and control their liquidity needs? Are they doing something?
So first of all, banks don't necessarily, I wouldn't call it a fail. They still face difficulties. So there's flash crashes, for instance, that happen very often, which is essentially a significant drop down in the price of a security over a very short span. So this is because of liquidity as well, and algorithmic trading and all these other notions. But essentially this illustrates that my financial markets are very unstable. The way that they've been dealing with this is,
as we've mentioned, after 2008, most of the sort of federal regulators in the US and the UK and the Europe, they obliged banks to hold a certain liquidity buffer. And what the purpose of this buffer is, if the counterparty of a bank fails on their payments, this buffer should serve as a
collateral. Yes.
As an emergency as an emergency cash.
But yes.
But again, the size of that buffer, it is determined at the moment primarily on the historical data. So what they use is a model that looks back at all the previous transactions that they've had and the previous demands for cash that they've experienced, and they find the biggest one, and they say, look,
in the worst case scenario,
back in 1988, we had this one person who asked for $20 million at one go. So that's the collateral, that's the buffer that we need to have just in case that happens again.
Okay.
And it's very unreasonable, because when they compare their buffer and the actual daily intraday need that they experience for demand for payments, it's much lower. So there's always this gap that they cannot explain. What that means is they cannot predict their liquidity usage accurately. They do not have the model that can analyze data more efficiently and be able to help them reduce that buffer and predict it more accurately.
Yeah. She covered it.
Yeah, I think it's actually make things a bit more clear on what the situation is and what is done today. So why aren't those banks just doing what you do but internally? Why would they go through a third party, and why can't they just develop a solution internally to better manage and calculate the needs?
So really it's the data.
Okay.
That's one of the main problems as well. Generally building some form of machine learning algorithm requires a lot of specific data. Even the proof of concept that we built was quite restricted because of market participant identifiers that we couldn't get unless you receive proprietary data from these institutions. So that's the first challenge. The second challenge is, as I said before, a lot of the divisions operate in isolation. They don't talk to each other. Sometimes they have Chinese walls between them where they're not allowed to talk to each other. So that becomes a problem where you can't capture necessarily a view of your liquidity just because of the infrastructure and the restrictions on the infrastructure. And then I guess the third one really is, this is a research project. A lot of institutions, banks specifically, view research projects as quite a large investment, and it takes
a long time investment.
Yeah, it's a long-term investment to them. And I don't want to mention any names, but just because we signed some NDA agreements, but some institutions that we're dealing with at the moment, when we go in there and we speak to them and we say, hey, what's your, I don't know, are you doing optimal execution? Are you measuring liquidity, etc.? And you'll be surprised to find out that they're not, and we expect them to be doing this, and because it's just such a long-term project for them that they don't want to embark on it at the moment. But the need is pressing. By regulation, it's mandated that they measure the liquidity and report it to regulators as well. So they're figuring out different ways of doing this, but they're struggling, and the regulators themselves have essentially handed out rules that they themselves don't know how to implement, or they themselves don't know how to advise on how to implement them as well. So that becomes a huge problem.
On the regulation aspect, just is there any consequences if they don't comply? Because if there are regulations, even if they're not doing anything.
So the problem with the regulations is, and in many countries, the regulators they understand the problem, what the problem is, and then they say what the ideal case scenario is, but they have no idea how to implement it. And to the point that Christian made earlier, teams in large financial institutions, especially in banks, they operate in silos, and what that means is Team A doesn't speak to Team B, but Team A needs the data that Team B has, and they don't even know about each other. So there is not this like coherent drive within their organization to collaborate and try to solve the problem. So when the regulators come in and say, look guys, we need you to be able to do this, the financial firms are just struggling because they don't know how to implement these solutions, and they don't have, the specialists, they don't have the resources to implement this, because the data is everywhere, and it's one of the challenges that we're going to be facing, and a lot of startups in the fintech are facing.
And sometimes the data isn't also necessarily available for you to be able to. So there's two types of markets essentially. There is electronic markets, and they are basically a lot of futures and equity products are traded on these markets. But there's another side to the financial industry, which is the OTC market, over the counter. And the problem here is a lot of the trades are conducted bilaterally. What this means is there is no what we call a limit order book. Sorry.
That's a
Okay.
lot of jargon.
No.
The difference is with electronic markets, you have a single source of data. So you have an electronic platform which stores the data. It records information about all the transactions that they happened, that they got cancels, the size of it, who did it, etc. So there is a single source of data. With over-the-counter markets, the whole notion is that it's kind of a over-the-counter, so there's no visibility. If Christian and I make a trade, you wouldn't know about it, but we have the record of this transaction. So the only data that is out there is the proprietary data. So if I'm a bank and I'm trading with counterparties, I store the data about my transactions, and I can then analyze that data to build my own models.
So the problem is there is no data to train your machine learning algorithms on.
Again, correction, there is data, but because I am the one collecting my own data, I only have data about my own transactions.
Okay.
So there is less data, put it that way.
Yeah, which is a problem because machine learning is all about data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I have many questions about that, but I'll keep them for later on when we deep dive more into the solution itself. I think we covered quite some ground here and lots of different notions. So maybe it would be good to give people some few minutes to just integrate and think about what you're building. Just in a few words, why now is the best moment for you to approach this market? Is it specific because of machine learning progress, because of the technology, because you've been working on it for many years? Is there a specific reason why right now that's the best moment to tackle this big problem?
Do you want to go?
Well, I can start, yeah. So in my opinion, there are two reasons. So first of all is the current market. So what's happening, even almost a month ago, we had a repo market meltdown in the US where the government had to step in and, help out the financial institutions. And it's kind of a lot of firms are sensing this kind of electricity in the air. And again, it all relates to the notion of liquidity and the fact that since 2008, the problem hasn't been solved, 10 years. And the second reason is, you're right in saying that machine learning is picking up. We can see the usage of it in banks within, functions such as crime prevention, fraud detection, compliance. Mm-hmm. So it is already in there, and slowly it's going, through back office into the front office, mm-hmm. into knocking on the door. And we can see financial institutions that are leaders in doing this, like JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs with their AI lab. They're adopting this technology because you have to stay on top of the innovation to be the leader in what you're doing. Mm. So there's two reasons: the fact that the market needs the solution, and the kind of solution that we're developing is utilizing the innovative technology that is, seeing its wide adoption at the moment, is the reason why now is the best time for us to do this.
Yeah, I would agree.
Great, well, exciting. Then let's play some video games. It's going to be less serious than when we just talked about, but it's a good way also to digest everything and to go to something lighter. So I'm just going to launch the game.
Is it an Xbox? Yes, it is.
It's an Xbox controller. I have many controllers, so we all have a different controller.
Okay.
So one of you will get an Xbox controller, the other one a Steam controller. So I guess maybe for you the Xbox controller, because it's slightly easier to get in hand if you're not used to video games. Okay, and I'm just going to launch the game then.
Muddle Dash.
Yes, so the game today we're playing is called Muddle Dash. It's a game I tried this week, and if some of you follow me on Twitter, it's actually a very fun game, and I didn't had any expectation. I just tried it and didn't know what to expect, and just loved it. So for some reason it doesn't appear yet on the stream, so I'm going to make sure settings are right. For some reason nothing works as planned today. No, we're fine. It's supposed to be fine.
It's always the case.
Yes, exactly. So it's a really easy game. It's not too complex. And before I explain a bit more about the game, I'd like to invite everyone to jump into the discussion and ask a question. If it's serious question, I may not pass them on right now. I might wait until we're done with the game, because it's so hard really to play and just chat on some serious topic at the same time. But if you have a lighter question, I just ask them right now. And let's play some games now. So I think I don't have the main controller. That's right, you may have it.
It's a Twitch, it seems.
No, you do?
That's me.
Okay, perfect. So start. And then we are this small.
Wait, we're all here?
Yes,
okay,
we're all
I
here.
See.
And
I'm the blue character.
And I'm not, for some reason.
I don't know what I'm doing.
So basically, if you click A,
yeah, that's
the button at you should jump. And you're not. Okay, fine. Time to check out
You're gonna play
the settings as usual. Well, you can play around and discover the
environment,
the controls. As usual, I'm back with the cables.
Do you want to swap over just to have it go? I just turn colour.
So it's a really nice game. The sound is really cool. I really love the music of the game. We don't have it right here, but everyone watching us has the sound. Okay, so I am in.
Okay.
And you're not.
No.
Fine. Let me check this out.
So
I'm changing my head as I kick.
there was the gifts you were talking about.
Yes, so it's all about a birthday party, and that's why we all have small hats. And then when the game starts, here's just a menu, so we need to all. Okay, you're ready.
Yeah.
Yes.
You good with that?
So there are not that many buttons, and basically it's a birthday party, so we're all invited to a birthday party, and we can just jump and kick with the X. That's the only buttons we have, basically.
Okay.
And the idea is to go to the party, but with a present.
Okay.
So if you want to start, let's just jump into one of those. I don't know what you call that.
Here?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Do we have to match colors?
No.
Just.
Okay.
I think it's quite random, actually, the colors. Okay, so when we all jump, we see our characters. So I am green, you're blue, and you get the package. So the idea is to follow the arrow to go to the end of the level with the package.
Oh.
But the one with the package is the one who will win.
Okay, so you guys have to get it off me.
Well, exactly.
Okay, perfect.
And if one of us goes really far away, we are all going to jump to follow them.
Oh, where am I?
You're gonna lead over.
And we can kick each other. So I think I just threw your package, but you got it back.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So as you can see, it's
is
not
it
that.
me?
Yeah.
It's you, yeah. You just need to go straight.
Hey,
How do I go fast?
You can go too fast. There is no boost, and you are slowed down by the environment.
No.
Oh, I do have it.
Yes, you do.
Colors are confusing. You're like, is it me?
I think we all swap colors randomly.
What? No.
Yes.
No, I'm still the yellow one.
I'm still green.
No.
No, you're still blue. No
Yeah,
worries.
I'm still blue.
Yes.
Oh,
How do I?
Okay, so I won the first one, and basically, you see, this guy is letting you in just when you have the package.
okay.
But I think you still managed to get in, actually.
I got in, yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. I don't know why. You're not supposed to.
I sneaked in.
Okay, so we all need to jump to get the package.
Oh, I have like interesting.
You have what?
There are controls optimized directly.
Oh,
like
yes.
buttons on the control.
It's a Steam controller, so you have many buttons that we don't have here. It's actually a very nice controller, but can be hard to get used to.
Wait, who is it again?
Oh, that's not that.
I think Anna does now.
There you go.
So do you play video games sometimes?
I
Never.
haven't played video games in a while, but obviously as a kid, this is all we did. Right? It was an escape.
Oh. Oh, I changed.
Yes.
Oh, I was red for a moment.
Does that mean get blue?
So what do you do in your free time? I do spend some time playing video games, I have to say it, I have to be honest. But what do you do then?
I enjoy doing sports.
Okay.
So I go swimming. So when I was in high school, ooh, here we go.
Oh, you won!
I'm
Yeah!
the loser twice in a row. Like I didn't even get in this time.
Girl power.
Okay. Fair.
Yeah, so I go swimming. I enjoy running. I enjoy working out because, especially in the financial industry, you just need to kind of have this energy release.
Yes.
Exercise energizes, and that's what I enjoy. But what else?
Cooking? You cook a lot.
Yeah,
Oh, that's nice.
Oh,
I love cooking.
try to experiment with a few things. I like baking as well.
Yeah, and there's a person that used to come into the office with cakes. And just get everyone fat.
Yeah. Well.
Well, it's all about moderation, right?
Yeah.
If you eat cakes every day.
Depends on how good the cake is, to be honest. If the
That's
cake is
right.
awesome, you can go for it every day.
Yeah, but baking the cake takes ages, so you wouldn't really bake a cake every day.
Exactly, yeah. And then it's a special occasion, right? Oh, there is cake today.
Ooh.
And I think, apart from the financial space, I think just doing sports sometimes, or having something to just clear your mind is so important. I used to hate sport, really.
I just got kicked away again. Is there something? There's a bias in the game.
It's
There's
okay.
a bias in the game.
Yeah, no one tried to get the present this time. I had it and was like, okay, let's just go forward.
Do you know what? My strategy was I'm gonna wait until until almost the end, and I'm gonna kick you and get the present. Because
Right,
when you get the present at the beginning, you're always at the risk of losing it to others. But if you let others carry it to the end, then you kind of just push forward.
The optimal
Real strategy. But you try to get in without a present, and you realize that doesn't work. That's why there is a guard at the front door.
Did not expect that.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes, we will go here.
Grab this. Wait, how did you?
Oh.
Sometimes you have to do a double jump. So you see, it's not too hard as a game.
No, but it's actually quite fun. It's entertaining, actually.
I just love trying the games. All the time for the stream, I try several games, and I'm like, oh, I love this one.
Platforming games are classical, though. So I mean, you can't never get. Well, you can't really get a really bad platforming.
Yes.
They generally are pretty fun.
And you have quite often really good surprises, especially from the non-mainstream games. I have some friends sometimes saying, oh, I like stopping by the stream just to try and see what kind of games you're playing, just to get some inspiration.
You guys are moving faster than I am somehow.
No.
Maybe we're taking the ramps.
Yes.
And there's some mud.
Oh, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
Oh, you did it.
Okay, I'm really bad at games. Wow, 3 in a row.
But see, one thing I've learned throughout this game is sometimes when I was too behind you guys, I just stayed behind on purpose, because then I randomly reappear.
Oh.
Yes,
Well,
that's
you
right.
guys have all these optimal strategies.
Oh, okay.
I like how you make the strategy as you go, like every level, so you're like learning something different.
What, you're ahead of
Where
us
are we?
without the gift?
Yes.
Oh, it just
And
randomly.
I got it.
Yeah, see, you caught you.
Okay, so that is a good strategy.
Well, see, strategy is no longer any good when
Can
everyone
I
else
fight you guys off while I have the gift?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, that's perfect.
The gift is on your head, so it's not on you to take us.
I have to win one, at least.
What are these red things you see when we... Well, I don't know, it happened to me a few times when you just blow up and become red.
You're in a kind of a bubble, right? That's what you mean?
It looks like when... it happens out...
Come on. Sorry, I'm so focused, I just want to win this one again.
I think it may be when sometime we jump on something.
Yes! Do the levels extend? As in, are they longer?
I think they're quite randomized. You did it! You won once! It won't happen again, we're going to fight harder now.
I think that's one each, right? That's one each, right? You've won?
I think so.
Yeah,
And I was
twice.
twice.
I think.
No, I'm sure you won one.
It's okay.
It's okay.
Well, I don't think it keeps scores. I'm not sure. I haven't played with other people yet. Try just on my own, and because you have to be at least 2 people playing, I tried just with the 2 controllers, but not with someone else.
Oh.
So I'm always learning new mechanisms this way.
Oh. Yeah, it's an interesting environment.
Yeah, I think it's quite randomized. I think it's never the same level twice.
No.
You have some elements in common, but I think every time it's something slightly different.
Oh, you can actually kick stuff towards people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just happened to... See that?
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
That's how I became a red bubble.
And
Why
if
does it
got-
only happen to me?
Yeah, and if it falls on someone, then the person kind of is immobilized. Yeah, I got it!
Did you see how I kicked you?
Yeah, and I still have these stars around my head saying that I'm a bit
Woozy.
dizzy and everything. Yeah.
jumping ability.
Yeah, sometimes you get stuck in some corners or something. You lost the package.
But it just reappeared.
I think I just enjoy. Ooh, here you go. Just randomly.
Anna, that's a great strategy. I love your strategy. It works.
Oh, you can get blocked. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. That's...
I guess I took a strategy of just disturbing everyone.
Well, it works. I think you won more than we did.
Oh.
Staying clear with the guy.
None of us are gonna finish this.
I don't know where am I? I lost myself.
Were you just waiting there?
I don't know where. Oh, here we go.
Oh, you did it! I was waiting near the security guy for you and just to kick you at the last minute, but yeah, no. Got some inspiration from my man, but no, it didn't work out. Okay, what about we say it's the last level.
Okay.
Sounds good?
Yeah. Oh, whoa, what was that?
I have
You
no
got stuck
idea.
in the mud.
Yeah. I think I'm far away. I'm gonna get
but
you.
you will
all.
probably spawn us.
I think
wherever
so,
you are.
yeah.
But where's the
you.
package?
I don't
What's the
know.
package?
Oh, it's right here.
It's randomly reappeared.
Okay, I have this bad techniques where I jump all the time, not to be slowed down by the, I don't know, the things on the floor.
It's a strategy.
I'm not sure it works really well. Oh no! No, I did it!
I think we all won twice.
That's pretty good.
Yeah! Oh wow, that's
very
interesting.
Well, thank you. That was quite enjoyable.
Definitely.
I think it's a great way of, just getting more relaxed and back to the interview, but in a more chill out way. So I see that more people are joining us. Hi, Shizumi. I'm really bad with names, so sorry for that. If it's not how to pronounce your name, let me know. But good to see you here today. We just played some video game, and now we'll be getting back to the interview really shortly. Once I change the scene, actually. And here, just going to remove the game so we don't have the sound of the game for the entire discussion. Could not be fun for you guys. And yes, we're back. Fantastic. That was really fun. You said you're not playing that much game now, but you all have different techniques and everything, so...
Random strategies on the fly. That was really good. I enjoyed that very much so.
Yeah, I think lots of my guests are a bit worried about the games part, and they're all asking, so what kind of games is it? Is it hard? Is it competitive? And I'm like, no, it's really chill out. And everyone is actually beating me all the time.
Okay.
I think because I keep an eye on everything,
Yeah.
I have an
No,
excuse.
well,
but
I mean,
yeah.
we all won at least twice, so that's a good
Yes, quite balanced. Okay, so we talked about what you're doing and the problem you're solving, and we mentioned lots of things regarding the ecosystem and the fintech space. Now I'd like to dive a bit more into the data aspect because when we talk about machine learning, and here we're talking about machine learning applied to the fintech space and more specifically to the liquidity needs. So when we talk about machine learning, we quite often talk about data, and we started touching this point earlier. So just first thing that comes to mind, do you need lots of computing power? Do you have any specific needs or any specific constraint due to the fact that you have to deal with a huge amount of data?
Yes.
That's a simple answer.
So we're dealing with high frequency data at least for the proof of concept. There are other types of market data that's out there. But the high frequency data is basically on a tick by tick basis, what high frequency means is the data is very granular, very, very granular. So one day's file could be approximately 8 gigs to 15 gigs.
Just for one day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. What we mean by tick is, usually you have your data as a time series. So you have, events that happen at regular intervals, like every minute or every second. With the financial data, you can have, 100 of events that happen within the scope of a second. So we're talking about like a nanosecond timestamp kind of data. So you can easily see how for products that are traded very frequently, the data about this, like the data can easily become
large,
just enormously large.
We analyzed data over a year, so you can imagine if an 8 gig file is just over one day, what that means over a year or two.
But that's the kind of the trade-off. To build an accurate model, we need as much data as we can have. So we need to look back at, as far back as we can see. But what that means is that you require a lot of computing power to be able to do that efficiently, or it comes at a cost of long processing times. So during our proof of concept, which was my research work at the University of Glasgow, some of the algorithms that I have implemented, although they were optimized using some, I'll talk about the sort of the technicalities a bit later, but they were optimized to run efficiently, yet some of the algorithms would take me about a day to run. So I would just turn it on in the morning and go do my things, and I come back in the evening like, God damn, there's just some error, or like the result is not as expected, and then you have to rerun the whole model again. Going forward, we will be looking to utilize different, infrastructures and resources that can help us do it efficiently. But it is a challenge, but not a bottleneck for us.
But again, you need the data, because the more data, the better the accuracy of the algorithm, and also you avoid what's known as overfitting of the model itself. The great thing is with electronic markets, there's a lot of available data, very clean data, depending on where you get it from. The data can be very expensive. So we basically had Google Cloud infrastructure, a couple of databases on there, and we built the infrastructure over a couple of weeks.
So use their compute engine. We've tried a number of alternative providers like Amazon and Azure, just to name a few. But through our, ups and downs, we decided to go out with Google. It might come up quite costly, but the nature of what we're doing, we need to be able to have the best infrastructure that is capable of processing this. There is a notion, some of our potential clients and within the industry, there is a large concern with regards to the processing of data and whereabout it is processed. So in that respect, we are talking directly with our clients and making sure that the way we're handling their data is according to their standard. And for that reason, sometimes we have to come in on premises to be able to build our pilot and to prove our concept with them. So there is two sides of the data. There's one that we have a lot of data and then we can build a model. And then the second side is that within the financial industry, notion of data is very sensitive. And especially now because of the GDPR regulation, we have to be very cautious of, not only what we're doing with the data, but how we're doing it.
Yeah, how we're storing it as well, generally.
Exactly. And does this mean that when you're working on data from your clients and when you also get data from the market, does this mean that you have to put some kind of equation and just separate everything? Does it mean that you have to go to the client and train your own model or your solution with the data and that's it? Keep it like having a customized solution for a specific client, or does it feed back to your own solution, and the more data you get over time, the better it becomes?
So we're collating data at the moment from clients that we're working with. We don't want to produce a specific solution for a specific client. Really what we're trying to, I don't know if anyone's familiar with indices or an index. An index is a benchmark, essentially. What we want to do at the end of the day is come up with a liquidity index, which doesn't exist across markets holistically. And
I guess this is a more sort of a long-term vision. At the moment, we're still early in our journey of getting over that initial barrier of asking firms to share the data with us. As I mentioned, in banking, it is very difficult. Luckily, we have a number of senior advisors, mentors, and partners who help us speak to the right people and get us through to the clients. So in our sort of pilots, we're building with a number of I can't mention the names, but I would say like big British banks. So we come in on premises and we build our model trained on their data. So in that respect, the model is uniform and it can be applied to any data, but it's trained, tailored to their data.
Okay.
So the solution can be applied within any institution, but the data at the moment is specific to the ones that we develop in the pilot with. There is a big drive in banking, and not only in the retail banking, but you might have come across it. It's notion of open banking.
Yes.
So you know how with current, bank accounts, like a current account, the one that or a saving account that you have, you can access it if you have an account with, say, I don't know,
Barclays.
Bank A. Barclays. You can go to TSB and access your Barclays account through TSB. So this similar drive is happening within the investment banking, where firms realize the benefit of consolidating data together and being able to see this coherent picture of their interactions. So some of this drive comes from a regulatory side. So there is an existing regulation, CSDR, which enforced firms to share the data to be able to understand how failure on certain transaction processing affects the rest of the market. And this project was successful. So following that success, we can then go forward and say, look, what we're trying to deliver is a solution that would benefit everyone in the market. It's not only for one firm to use and be better than others. What we're trying to do is to democratize the markets and to be able to deliver a fair price and a fair service to everyone.
And this is usually the technology that's adopted. I'm sure everyone, ledger technology, so blockchains is how they facilitate the sharing of information in a secure manner. So that's basically a lot of institutions kind of in the past have frowned upon it, but more so in recent times it's being adopted quite well.
Okay. So they're very open about that. They don't mind adopting
it. With a little push. I guess they come a lot of very senior people in finance come from a long background of running the firm and relying on what they know. And when this innovative technology drive comes in, they're very cautious, but not to say that they're reluctant. They're willing to try, they're willing to see, they're very positive about bringing the improvements to the industry, but they're also very cautious and sensitive about it.
And we also are right now talking a lot about banks, but you mentioned earlier that the solution could also be applied to different industries or use cases. What kind of, or in the future, what kind of industry could be also in your target?
So we can shift away from banking slowly.
Talk about Blocksprint.
Oh yeah, so currently we're involved in UCL's Blocksprint. The reason why is so
a little bit of a promotion.
What is it? Yeah, what's Blocksprint?
So
we are actually looking for teammates. So if anyone's interested, drop us a note. Go on.
Yeah, so Blocksprint is essentially a hackathon project that's being run out of UCL, and what they are trying to do is utilize distributed technology, so ledger technology, in order to solve various problems within finance. So again, it comes back to finance, but it's not necessarily banking.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be banking.
Payment system. Yeah. So the Blocksprint, from blockchain, is supported by a company called Ripple. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm not in the payments industry, but they provide the data for the project, and we come in as a liquidity expertise, and we're collaborating with another startup called Starlex. So that's a spin-off from UCL as well. And we joined together on the Blocksprint to deliver a solution that would help to reconciliate and net payments within the payment system, but more so also to optimize liquidity within the payments industry, because they face exactly the same exactly the same problem. For example, cross-border payments, when different banks in the different countries have payment obligations. they need to hold certain, buffer in a certain currency to be able to meet those obligations. So they face exactly the same problem, and that's where we're gonna come in and build a solution within this during this hackathon, which is in November, 2 weeks in November. It's a part-time hackathon, so it's not during the day. It's going to be after work and during the weekend. So everyone, just check it out if you're interested. Let us know. But payments is one of the industries, and I mentioned earlier we can also apply our solution to supply chain, where this problem is a little bit more emergent, in that whilst the banks have this buffer that they're required to hold by regulators, supply chain, so we're talking about, companies like, Marks and Spencer, Debenhams, or Argus, they don't have this obligation, so they don't actually have any buffer. So if one of their counterparties fails on payments, or their sales don't go through, or something happens, they can just fail, because they don't have that cushion of a buffer that they can, fall back onto. So for them, being able to estimate their liquidity requirements and how should they expect, the counterparties to react, and how the price is going to change, is very important, and is
more immediate.
It's
it's much more of an immediate need in that industry. But in another application is not necessarily just in banking. So there's two sides of the street, as we call them. So there's the buy side and the sell side. Right now we're focusing specifically on the sell side, which are the large banks. But on the buy side as well, hedge funds, asset managers, insurance corporations, they all have to manage some capital in some way. They face different regulatory obligations, but still they face a need for liquidity. So the technology can be applied there as well. It's just we're not focusing on that at the moment. We're just trying to solve it in one area.
One thing at a time.
Yes.
That's very true.
And you're also still a very early stage startups. And that means that, let's say I'm a bank, or someone in the audience is from a bank and is interested in jumping in your solution and using your solution. What do you have today? Do you have a proof of concept, as you mentioned? Do you have something that people can start using? Is it more of a pilot project, a partnership to start with, and then later on the solution will be ready? What's the stage?
So I can explain how the journey has...
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Perfect.
So I met Anna at RBS a few years ago. She was working in the prime brokerage service and front office technology, essentially. And I left to go do some other things in other financial institutions. And one promise, basically we are technicians.
We are engineers.
We're engineers, we're big geeks.
So we both come from a very technical background, and we enjoy very much.
So, but one thing that we were frustrated with within banking is they have a lot of legacy technology, so they deal with a lot of legacy technology, and the drive to push innovative technology specifically within the front office is very difficult. So Anna decided to depart from the industry and embark on her own journey, essentially. But the promise we made was, if you ever decide to do something not to do with banking or something completely different, let me know. So she went up to Glasgow. She was self-funding her master's degree in quantitative finance, and she was immediately, essentially, as soon as she got there, called me up and said, "Hey, I have a solution. No one solved it. It's known as optimal execution. Do you want to come up and help me build the infrastructure around it?" At the time, I was at Goldman Sachs, and I was like, "Okay, cool." Quit my.
I'm gonna go to Glasgow.
Quit my job. Went up there, and within a couple of months, we set up all the infrastructure, gathered the data, and this was me essentially managing all the infrastructure and all the things that were needed to actually put this in place, and her implementing the machine learning algorithms. And where we got to is we started basically building a I'm not sure if, well, there's probably an audience of data scientists out there. So we started with essentially what's known as a decision tree, and then moved it over to a random forest. And what this means is we were trying to measure what's known as market impact, and inherently when you do this you also measure what's known as liquidity as a byproduct of measuring the market impact of trades. So today what we've built is a machine learning algorithm which we're using deep neural nets, as probably a lot of other people are, which gives you a more accurate measure of liquidity within the market.
Measure as in like forecast. So it can forecast the expected market impact more accurately.
Yeah. And this is by a degree of 33% better accuracy.
When compared to the traditional statistical models that they currently have in the industry. So during my degree, as Christian mentioned, when I went to Glasgow, so I decided to kind of leave my career in front office, and I got a little bit of tired, progressing with my sort of a ladder within the firm, becoming a manager and then managing a team. And although I enjoyed growing as a leader, I felt like my technical background and my skills are not flourishing. So I decided to go back into academia and to kind of put myself in that environment where I can, decide what I want to do and focus on something that's important to me. So as following what Christian just said, very quickly I went to speak to different professors and said, look, I want to implement something practical and I want to do something that can make a difference. I have this technical skills, I can code, I can lead a team, I have industry experience, and I'm very passionate and very driven. Everyone was surprised about it, but nonetheless we came, I met my supervisor, Professor Anke Schaukeval in the University of Glasgow, and with him we had a discussion about the beautiful mathematical problem of optimal execution, and it's how agents interact in this stochastic environment and come up with an optimal decisions and eventually end up in a Nash equilibrium. And what that means is we all achieved such an optimal position of what we're doing that by somebody else trying to do something else wouldn't make it better. It's a bit of a mouthful, but long story short, it fascinated me because there was a challenge of not only technical implementation and mathematical foundation, but also how does this practically apply to the industry? What pain can we solve right now? So when Christian and I started working together on this, the infrastructure and the implementation and data gathering, pre-processing, we understood the technical benefit of it and the beauty of a problem that we're solving, but we asked ourselves, how does it benefit the industry? Why would somebody be interested in that? So we enrolled on the Accelerator program Conception X, which is targeted specifically at the early stage startups, primarily started from UCL, but they're also open to candidates from other universities such as ourselves. We are from Glasgow, and they help early stage companies progress through the entrepreneurial journey and bring them forward to their sort of next round. And throughout that program, we've met with a number of people in the industry and from our network as well. People like portfolio managers, or traders, desk managers, liquidity specialists, risk managers, a different variety of people to understand that the pain point that they have now is this measurement of liquidity. And the algorithm that we have built can yield a very significant cost savings to them. So I guess bringing it back to your question, and sorry for such a long kind of a diversion, what we have at the moment is an algorithm. It doesn't have any front, sort of a user front GUI kind of stuff. And we demo and we show it to our clients and our investors using what's known as a Jupyter notebook. For those of you who are not familiar with the Jupyter notebook, is a kind of a tool or a web page where you can interactively run the code and it produces various graphs. So it's an interactive code basically, and we can show it to our clients and to our investors. The next step in our journey is kind of expanding on that proof of concept, but to do that we need the data. So currently we have a number of ongoing relationships with 3 or 4, 3 confirmed and 4 maybe British banks to build the pilot using their data. And that's where we are now.
So basically, if there's any data scientists out there, if there's any quantitative researchers, we're coders ourselves. We do a lot of quant work as well, but anyone's welcome if you have that type of profile. So
Great. Yeah, I'll be happy to also spread the word on social media if we can help out. Okay, so you covered many things, and I have many questions. So you started touching on some of the question and completely answering other of my question, which is fantastic. Really, that's great. So I just would like to get back to some of the different aspects you mentioned. And first, it's the research part. So as a startup, how do you integrate research into the day-to-day activity? Because when we think about startup, quite often we think about having first a solution that you can really quickly get to market, get your client to test, and here you are a deep tech startup and you require some research. So how do you integrate that into just the pipeline and the
so it's never about having a product. You can have a product, but you can't sell a product that doesn't solve a problem, right? So the first stage really is to kind of understand your client's pain points and see where the commonalities lie. If client A and client B or client C have exactly the same complaints and what they don't go to bed at night because of the same issue, essentially, we know that there is something that needs to be resolved. The research processes, we basically adopt a data science process, which is an extension of the scientific method. And what you do is essentially you would gather data and you go through an entire pipeline of trying to disprove some form of a hypothesis. So we call this a null hypothesis.
I guess one of the misconceptions that we often find from various people is that they think that machine learning and deep tech is all about, get the data, put it into algorithm, and it spits out, this wonderful results.
Magic.
The first part of it, the data, is
Most
actually
critical.
the hardest and the longest part of it, because you not only need to consolidate the data, which is often hard to find and hard to gather, data pre-processing and understanding your data, getting it ready for the algorithm is where we tend to spend most of the time. And that's why every time we mentioned that, the next step for us is to get the data. Without the data, we can't really do much. So in our research, we always make sure that we make maybe not that complicated or sophisticated algorithms or decisions, but we want to make sure that whatever we do is robust and there is a transparent picture of how we got from A to B, because it's important within our industry. So a lot of clients are asking us, how are we going to explain to our investors what you're doing?
Yeah.
This notion that machine learning is a black box is another kind of a, how would I say, common thing that we come across that people think about. And although true for some types of machine learning, there is, supervised machine learning. There are algorithms that are, transparent and have explainability. So you can always tell, we made the decision because of this, that, and this. And that's what clients would like to see. And that's what investors would like to see, because they don't want to put their money into the black box and, hope that something comes out at the other end.
So yeah, there's a lot of biases you can introduce into the data when you're cleaning it. And by the time you train your algorithm to be able to predict or infer something. So usually machine learning is about two things: the inference of what we call a functional form, so how one variable changes with respect to another, and then the other is essentially out of sample testing, where you predict out of sample, and it's you've trained your model now and you want to see how well it does with unseen data, essentially. That all is dependent on the data. And as Anna was mentioning, this whole notion of a black box, there are a lot of algorithms out there that are black boxes. They work very well, extremely well, and no one understands precisely why they work. So there's a lot of research currently being conducted in academia with AI explainability. And what this means is taking a different approach. It's what we know as GOFAE, or good old-fashioned AI, and it's to do with artificial intelligence planning, as well as using another they classify it as machine learning, but it's not. It's reinforcement learning, which will help with the explainability of your essentially your model.
But I think right now, because you're also a small team, it's slightly easier to have this research aspect bundled with the day-to-day activity. But in the future, do you also see yourself keeping either one of you or just someone within the team doing some research and trying to push further the solution, or
Definitely.
perfecting the solution itself? Yeah.
So a lot of hedge funds do this as well. So everything nowadays is essentially it's data driven, right? But in order to do that, you need to have some form of a way of processing that data and consuming it, etc. So you need individuals that are able to handle that anyways. And you can't necessarily innovate without conducting any form of research. So we're very academic in that approach. You start from first principles, you try to figure out what it is you're trying to do before you put anything down in code or paper. That's just the same with coding, right? You never want to just bash out some code and then what we call spaghetti code, where it's just...
There's always a new drive of technologies, like we had the internet boom, now we have machine learning. There's always going to be the next new thing, and unless you're kind of embrace the new technology and you're open to try and you have this dedicated resources, that's the only way to go forward. We're not saying that what we develop today is going to be the ideal case scenario for the 20 years ahead. That's not true. And being a small team, we understand it more than anyone else. The importance of pivoting, the importance of being agile, the importance of failing fast.
Yeah.
I guess maybe kind of jumping ahead to your questions, one of the most important things that we've learned in our journey this far is fail fast.
Yes.
If you want to try out something, just do it. If it doesn't work, at least Sitting there and thinking, I have a brilliant idea that's going to solve everyone's problems, it's never going to happen. If you want to build something, if you want to build a company, if you want to try to build a company, you have to go out there and you have to speak to people. Those who cherish the idea and think that it's fantastic are going to be hugely disappointed when they bring it out to people.
Yeah, you don't want to sit in a dark room and code everything and then come out and no one
wants
is happy about your idea. So,
Couldn't agree more, definitely, and a big yes. And I think people need to remember that all the time. And I think it's good to also keep saying that to everyone. It's really hard to put yourself out there with something, and so people tend to want to get something really ready to go out there. But actually, no, just show your solution and show
and don't
yourself.
fear failure.
Exactly.
Don't fear failure because a lot of the times you just kind of nullify your abilities because you fear that something's not going to go the right way, but fail fast.
It never really go the right way. I mean, you plan something and nothing really happened as you plan. But that's part of the journey, because otherwise it wouldn't be fun if you plan something and everything happened as you planned. Like, it would be frustrating, right?
Yeah, and on that journey, when you plan things and they don't work out, there's always that one thing that comes out of nothing, this opportunity to speak to someone who you think, well, they might not be relevant, or to meet someone, to do something. And when you take this opportunity, which you think might be quite random, is where you meet other people, where you meet important people, where you get the opportunity. So fail fast, but also, get yourself out there.
Yeah. I just want to say hi to Maybe, who says that the interview is super interesting and that you deserve lots of positive feedback because you're really rocks. And we have also Laser. Hi, good to see you. Yes, Laser, we are with Anna and Christian, the co-founders of Symbiotica AI. So I'll put more information on the description and everything later on. We already talked about Symbiotica AI, so if you missed the beginning of the video and of the live stream, well, you will be able to find it later on. So thanks for joining us, by the way. Okay, so you also mentioned that you're talking to investors. What are their first reaction, and what's your plan ahead once you're done raising money? I think right now you're raising your first external investment and first institutional funding, right?
So yeah, the investors we met through the Conception X program a while back, and essentially we're at the stage in the journey where we need to scale significantly, and that's not only scaling the technology itself with our clients, but also scaling the team.
Yes.
It's so hard trying to stay on top of everything when there's two of you, and we both want to build things, we want to both research and do things, but there's meetings, there's emails, there's this and that and that, and you hardly notice how the week goes by.
She deferred her PhD for this, so
yeah. So my plan, initially when I started my masters, is I got so engaged into research and to learning and engaging with new technologies, new ideas, that I was planning to go do a PhD in financial computing at the University College London. And I had, a unique opportunity to work with some of the leading industry experts at the top university in the world on a program that is specifically tailored for those who are interested in fintech. But during the time of my master's degree and when Christian and I started working on Symbiotica, the things picked up and we literally just saw the scale of how this could be applied within the industry quickly and how there is a need for it. So I've made a decision to postpone my PhD just now because I think it's more important for me to be kind of a full-time on this and drive the company while we have this, the wave, the opportunity.
So over the next couple of months, essentially, the raising the capital is for the infrastructure. Market data is very expensive. Although we're working with banks for the proprietary data, we also need some external market data sources that cost a lot. And then the team.
Yeah.
So hiring the right specialists who basically share our vision of more stable and efficient markets. Just bringing.
So I guess more specifically, I don't know if there's anyone interested, but just to give you an idea of who we're going to be looking for in the next couple of months, we'll be looking for someone with passion for technology within financial markets, someone who ideally has a background in quantitative finance, someone who's an engineer, a geek, a techie. So people like that, we need you. But we also welcome people with more of a, maybe an MBA or a business background who understand the capital markets need and have skills and passion to build relationships with clients and help us also to manage the business, not only the technical side of it.
We also have a question that also get back to what you mentioned before, the fact that you are not continuing and doing your PhD. Laser asked if you think that today it's really important to have a degree today in 2019 to really do things.
No.
Hold on. There are mixed feelings about this, right?
Well, let me explain my position. I don't think so because I've met a lot of brilliant people who just self-starters who can get up and go, and the most skilled people that I've met are those who have driven themselves to that point, who have studied, who have developed, who have built projects. So no, I don't think you need a piece of paper to be able to be smart and to do things. But that piece of paper that I have just mentioned also opens a lot of doors. And that's the annoying thing. Because academia is structured in that way that it can facilitate the learning process, and it gives you the right resources and it gives you the right time to be able to learn and to progress, to meet the right people. But at the end of the day, it's a piece of paper that you get. And a lot of people who are going to sit in the same degree as you might not see the benefit, might be just doing that degree. And that's what I faced in my master, is that I made the decision to go back to academia very purposefully, and I had a clear goal of what I'm trying to achieve. Because I paid for my degree myself, and as an international student, it's quite expensive. And I paid for a year of not working and taking this year out and not having any sort of a financial liquidity buffer, so to say. So it's a hard decision, and I was very determined in what I'm doing. But a lot of people on my course were just there after their bachelor's, and for them it was like the next step in their journey. They didn't quite know what they're doing. So there's this, yes, that academia is a very important decision and it helps you gain a lot of knowledge in a short period of time, but also it is overestimated in my opinion.
This is the reason why you see alternative platforms, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, etc., right, where individuals are progressing their skill set, but not from traditional means of, it's still being recognized essentially, but it's not a traditional means of acquiring the knowledge in that space.
I think e-learning and edtech are the next kind of a new thing. So we see how Lynda got acquired by Microsoft.
Yeah.
LinkedIn. No, first Lynda by LinkedIn and then LinkedIn by Microsoft. So a lot of people started using these platforms. A lot of hedge funds and banks are paying for their employees to be able to access platforms like Lynda or Udemy. And a lot of people who complete these courses, like even very senior people that I know, they put these kind of things on them LinkedIn.
I do.
Yeah, exactly. So what the recruiters and what the firms are looking for is not only your certificate and piece of paper that you received by paying for your degree, but your extracurricular activities, so your GitHub account, your Stack Overflow account, your the projects that you're involved in that show that you have a real passion and drive for what you say you do, so to say.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question.
One thing I will say is academia provides a coherent structure of precisely what subjects to learn at what time and how to progress those to, from the fundamental basis all the way to something that's more complex, right? And sometimes you may be sitting on Lynda or LinkedIn or whatever it is, and you may be doing a course that just covers some attribute of an entire subject, so you don't precisely have a coherent view of how everything, the whole picture fits together. So that's what academia goes and provides, or attempts to. So there are benefits, there's cons and pros essentially.
And I think it also requires lots of discipline, personal discipline, when you're doing your own research and trying to learn something by yourself, because you need to find what is that covered by a specific course and find what you can find useful to combine with, and also find some ways to experiment with it and just to test your knowledge, because it's not because you sit in front of your computer and look at someone talking about a topic for an hour that you really know about the topic. What is going to stay and to stick to your mind?
It's to the application yourself, right? So
exactly.
Just be curious.
Yes.
and do what you love.
That's interesting, because we have quite often this question on the stream. Lots of people asking about their own situation and how they can improve and learn new things all the time. I think it's definitely coming where people are going to be more and more proactive on what they're learning about.
Again, within open banking, there's also open universities, so we're becoming a more open kind of world.
Yeah, open society.
Okay, so now I'd like just to get back to a bit to Conception X, because that's also something people ask me a lot when they're at a very early stage of the start, and they ask me if they should go through an accelerator. And you've been through Conception X, even though you were very early when you joined. And so did you find really useful, and what was the most useful thing that you got from being part of the accelerator?
So yeah, Conception X generally is a program that deals with Deeptech startups, specifically from PhDs. So when we joined, a number of individuals that were already on the program had been doing their PhDs. This was essentially their PhD research. And I guess what they realized as a program, Deep Minds, which came out of UCL, there were a lot of PhD students that were conducting state-of-the-art research, but we're not leveraging it beyond the walls of academia, essentially. So how can we apply these technologies that exist, these fundamental research that's being conducted in academia, how can this apply to the industry at wide? And they formed Conception X, which is basically sponsored by Barclays, and it's out of Idea London. And the program takes startups or individuals that are curious to see how they can leverage their PhDs and their research.
Just a bit of a promotion here. They're currently accepting applications for the new cohort. So if you type in Conception space X, do check it out.
Yeah.
I also put the link, but I think it's just for people in London, right? So
No.
So this is
I mean, we were in Glasgow,
right?
And we have commuted to every single training and workshop and meeting, which was very expensive, but we committed to the program. So we traveled all the time from Scotland to London for all these events, and it was a very unique program. But Christian, sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
Yeah, and what the program offers really is a network of individuals with a wealth of experience and expertise in the domain that you're trying to solve.
And it's not only fintech.
No, this is not only necessarily fintech, but I will say it's deep tech. So this is, I hate the word deep, sorry. This is technology that's, so for instance, they have companies that are leveraging quantum mechanics, for instance.
Quantum computing.
And quantum computing. They have
biohackers.
So it's everything, right?
They have people who drive, social media, fair social media, democratizing, insurance policies. So they apply machine learning and artificial intelligence principles to solve real world problems. We just happen to be the fintech company, but they accept startups from a number of universities. It's not just for London. It's not just UCL. They're looking primarily at PhD, but also master's students. And it's very much early stage. So if you have an idea, if you have proof of concept, if you have something to show, do drop them a line.
Yeah.
And the resources are from, we're not salespeople. We're very technical, as I said before. They teach you how to speak to people, how to get out there and how to sell a product, how to build a commercialized product, something that you actually can sell commercially. They have mentors that are from within the industry that you're at, or that you're trying to specialize in. They have sessions that they held sessions on a weekly basis, essentially.
It's a goal-based mentoring, so
Yes.
you're not only seeing regular people every now and then and tell them what you've done, but when you meet them, you define some goals that you meant to,
scopes.
objectives to be achieved in the next meeting, and then you kind of tell them how you've progressed, what you need to do. They introduce you to the right people. They give you the necessary artifacts for you as an entrepreneur, especially for someone from a technical background, to be able to communicate with investors, the clients, of how to organize your business canvas model, how to understand where you are in your journey, and the legal things like your IP or your if you need to patent your idea. They give you access to sort of a lawyer firm as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're signing any contracts or if you're negotiating an NDA with someone, they can have a look through that. Because it's small little things that you don't think about when you have this big idea that you want to just take out in the world. In that respect, I personally do recommend going into the Accelerator program or even an incubator program. Saying that, be very cautious, because there are a lot of programs that want you to come on board but might not be the right fit for you.
Yeah, I'd agree on that.
So after Conception X, we had the opportunity to participate in a number of other kind of next stage accelerators. Without mentioning the names, but there were a few, and what they usually do is when you're at a later stage, they take some of your equity or they take some of your revenue share for you to be able to participate in the program. And negotiating this contract could be sometimes difficult, and one thing that you need to learn at a very early stage is how to say no. Because everyone wants your idea, everyone wants you to succeed, and everyone wants to earn something on your success. But nobody really wants to be with you if things don't go well. So being able to determine, who's the right person to help you, what's the right opportunity, and saying no to those who are just not worth your time. Because at the moment we don't have much but our time, and that's our main sort of a treasure.
At the end of the program, one of the cool things they do is a demo day.
I was there.
Yes. So essentially, on the demo day, they bring together a lot of investors, a lot of VCs, micro investors, and even angel investors, and they essentially allow you to pitch in front of them. And this is to obviously build capital in order to take it to the next stage. And we did that recently, a few weeks ago, more than a month ago maybe. I don't remember what the event was. But
it was on 10th of October.
Okay, 10th of October, there you go. But that was interesting. That was an interesting day. And after that, it's up to you really what you do. But they continue to support you. Okay. So it's not like
it doesn't end.
No, it doesn't end. No.
I guess following on what you just said, it's up to you. All these accelerator programs and incubator programs, they give you the right opportunity and the right access to the right people. There is a lot of there's a table of things that you can pick on and do something, but at the end of the day, it's really up to you whether you do it or not. So they're not gonna sit down and develop a business plan for you. They're not gonna sit down and do your budget for you or your revenue model for you. They will give you a template. They will give you people who have done this before to kind of advise you, to give you feedback. But no one's going to do anything unless you do it. And that's an important thing that we saw quite a number of companies who joined with us on the program just didn't use the opportunity that was out there for them.
And it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have gotten to the stage we're at without the Conception X itself, or some form of accelerated program. But specifically with Conception X, it's some of the brightest minds I've ever met from the UCL and other universities as well. And people that are leads in their industry and they know what they're talking about, and people that will call you out if you don't know what you're talking about either.
Very much so. And it's important to understand that they will try to challenge you and challenge you to the point where you start, questioning yourself. But it's better for you to go for it as early as possible, because as Christian said, it's the worst thing that can happen to a startup is when you build something and then nobody needs it.
Yeah.
And then the question always too late.
Yes, very much so.
I think that's great promotion for Conception X, and I'm sure they will be very happy about that. So you think that those type of accelerators are super useful if you find the right match that fits your needs. Is there anything that is missing for you right now in the ecosystem that you wish you had more support with, part of the ecosystem?
I wish we had somebody else to help out, but that's another thing that we've learned. I guess it's an interesting story to mention, but when we just started, like when I asked Christian to come to Glasgow and start building a company, we also asked 2 more people from Glasgow University on my course to be part of it and to build the idea with us and to go for this journey. To only kind of quickly realize a couple months after that, not everyone has ability to commit, and not everyone can take this as seriously as you. So finding the right people is one of the most challenging things that we've sort of faced, and luckily we kind of quickly realized that it's not for everyone, and you don't want to just bring anyone. And so that's something to be aware of, and that's something that we've learned, and now kind of trying to find people to join. We always try ask around within UCL, within our network, but it's hard.
To speak to the right person. It's not only a person that is intelligent and understands what you're trying to do, but also shares your passion.
Yes.
Is committed to doing what they're supposed to do, and that's just, I guess, a 1 in 1,000 skill set. I guess and, it's hard to find that individual. But yeah.
And so what's next for you for the coming 6 months? Is there any specific big milestones? So right now you're raising money, but any other big milestones coming?
Yes. So essentially we have set ourselves a goal of 12 months.
Okay.
Maybe extend it to 18 months. Don't know yet. Essentially what we want to deliver is the scalable minimum viable product in the hands of several clients who are using it within their institutions, from their treasury desks to their traders. And
so we've mentioned earlier that we have a pilot agreed on with 3 or maybe 4 British banks. So this is something that we're going to be focusing on over the next 12 to 18 months to build this pilot and to develop into the minimal viable product. So
that's really what we're doing, which involves the whole hiring process,
sure,
which involves the setting up of the office spaces, etc., etc.
We are considering enrolling into another accelerator program.
You can mention Techstars.
Because specifically because of the nature of what we're trying to do, we're a fintech startup, and Techstars, and specifically Barclays Techstars, is a unique opportunity for people, for companies like ourselves, to be able to gain access to the right people and the right resources. There are other programs that are very attractive, but maybe suitable for different kind of businesses.
Okay.
So that would be another step on our journey.
I think Techstars is in January, so we'll start there.
So you have some time to plan your application then.
The application process is already far gone. It's just plan what you are looking to deliver, because it
what
really
you want to
push
achieve
you
from it, define the goals and the objectives and the deadlines.
Yes.
Okay.
Because at the moment we're still kind of confirming, the funding, the pilots and the Techstars, and having this clear roadmap for the next year is what we're trying to focus on now.
Yeah.
Okay. Exciting. So I think we are reaching the end of the interview. Maybe we can take one last question from Laser, who asked, where do you guys see yourself in 5 years? That's a big question, but sure.
Yeah, sure.
Let's try to answer that.
So the whole idea was for efficiency and stability of financial markets, right? And we were trying to democratize specifically what's known as market making. So market makers are the ones that actually facilitate the liquidity in the market. And what we envision this becoming in 5 years' time, maybe, I don't want to speak too early, is essentially utilizing reinforcement learning technology, machine learning technology, and AI in order to become a lead market maker external from banks and provide liquidity profiles using the technology that we are, facilitate the ability to actually make markets on behalf of our clients. So I know it's a lengthy goal and it's not,
but that's where we started. We started with optimal execution, and it has always been at the heart of our research at our company, and we don't want to lose that. Now, although we found like a pivot idea, which is a liquidity management, which is more immediate to what the clients need right now, and that's an existing pain point, we don't want to lose that optimal execution side of things that drove us to where we are now.
So we still want to incorporate that later on.
And that's the part of research. Remember, you asked us like if there's going to be someone doing the research. Yes, there is. As we grow and scale our company, we will be working with the data. So we will be collecting some of the data ourselves as well, that we can use later on to, train the reinforcement learning agent.
So reinforcement learning is, I don't know why people have placed it in with machine learning, but it's not machine learning. It's a lot of what AI is about, really. And I'm sure there's a lot of computer scientists that are sitting on the other side. And really the way I like to think about it is it's an abstraction of object orientation, and we think at the level of agents and how intelligent systems interact with each other. And the whole notion is learn by doing, right? So take actions in order to optimize some utility function, essentially. And this can yield high benefits within the markets themselves. A couple of firms are already exploring this specifically. JP Morgan have been doing this. And this is how do you train an agent to make these optimal decisions on how to execute your orders, how to slice them up, how to serialize them to various exchanges, and how to get the best price accordingly. So hopefully in the future we get to do this type of research ourselves, or that's what we're heading towards.
Okay, well, I think that summarized really well the answer to the question, and that's perfect to start wrapping up. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, or maybe some place we can find you? I think you don't have a website yet, and it was really hard to progress.
So we've been focusing mainly on the research at the moment, and the commercialization hasn't had to happen because we deal directly with the clients. But more and more recently we've been asked where's your webpage, etc.
Yeah, this week we have spoken to a company called Asaka Labs, and they're going to be helping us out to build our branding profile, our website, because the reason why we didn't go ahead with this kind of things just yet, we believe that it's important to get the right foundation that you can then start scaling on. We didn't want to go with something temporary and then having to replace that, etc., etc. So now we're in a position that we know we're going ahead with these clients, and it's important for us to build our brand. So we're using a professional company to help us do that.
Okay.
So at the moment, you can probably reach out to myself and Anna on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a LinkedIn profile a while back, and I deleted it. And then more recently, I opened it up again in order to deal with this specifically. So if you can find me, it's Christian Wayi-Wayi and Anastasia Buganko, and we're on LinkedIn. That's probably, as professionals, that's probably the most best way to find us.
We also have an email, which is quite simple, anna@symbiotica.ai or christian@symbiotica.ai. Drop us a line. We're happy to speak more about anything that we discussed today, anything about our company, hiring, or just if you're an entrepreneur and you have any questions on this journey, anything, just drop us a line. We're very open, very friendly, happy to discuss your feedback as well. And if there's anything that we've said that you think you might challenge or you want to challenge, we welcome that very much. So thank you.
Perfect. Well, I'll make sure to add your LinkedIn profile to the YouTube description. And that's it for today. So I would like to thank you, both of you, but also thanks everyone for joining us today. This has been a super interesting discussion, and I encourage everyone to just keep an eye on Symbiotica AI, but also on your own journey, and just to reach out to you. The video will be available on YouTube really soon, certainly later today, but also I will make sure to add the podcast version plus a highlight video on YouTube and also on the podcast platforms. So please do check out the different channels. We will be back with another guest in 2 weeks, and that will be hot. I don't want to spoil too much about the topic, but let's say we will need some moderation, I think, to make sure we keep things wrapped up, because it's going to be quite a tricky topic to talk about, but really exciting. Feel free to reach out anytime also, and I just wish you a fantastic weekend ahead. I see that there have been quite a few questions we couldn't answer and we couldn't ask, but yes, please feel free to just ask our guest. And I hope to see you next week. Oh no, in 2 weeks. Have a good day, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.